If your feet feel cold, heavy, or numb when you wake up, I need you to stay right here. 5 specific foods are quietly strangling the small vessels that carry warm blood to your legs and feet. You likely ate one of them this morning, and one of them, most people over 60 still believe is the responsible choice. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which 5 they are, why they affect older legs specifically, and what to do instead, starting with your very next meal. But there is also a hidden cause, something beneath all 5 foods, that explains why so many people do everything right with their diet and still cannot get their legs fully warm. I am going to explain that too before we finish. Please stay until we get there. My name is Dao Shen. For 60 years I have walked the ancient healing path my teacher placed before me, inside a monastery high in the Himalayan mountains. My teacher returned to one teaching above all others throughout his long life. He said that all illness begins in the belly. He did not mean only digestion. He meant that the body's entire capacity to send warm, nourishing blood all the way down to the last small vessel in the foot depends on the strength of that center. When the belly is strong, the limbs stay warm. When it is troubled, the cold begins to creep toward the toes. I did not fully understand how true this was until I began working with people outside our monastery walls. Inside our community, what I saw was straightforward. My mother lived past 85 and still climbed the stone paths near our village in her final years. The old monks of our lineage, many of them, walked the steep mountain steps well into their 80s. Without the cold and failing legs that so many describe to me today. They did not eat the 5 things I am about to name. Outside researchers who studied mountain communities like ours found low rates of the vessel narrowing physicians now call peripheral arterial disease. And those researchers confirmed in their laboratories what our lineage had lived quietly for centuries. But the people who come to this channel are not living inside a monastery. They carry 30, 40, sometimes 50 years of the modern diet inside their vessels. And I have learned that for them, the path back requires understanding not only what to remove, but what the body can no longer produce on its own after a certain age. We will return to that. First, the 5 foods. What is actually at stake here is not a test result. It is the Saturday morning when your grandchild reaches for your hand and asks you to walk to the park 2 blocks away. It is standing at your own stove and cooking the meal your family has loved for 30 years. The warmth from the burner reaching your hands the way it always used to. When the legs begin to fail, those moments go first, long before anything else. That is what we are protecting today. Here is what we are covering. A common grain that slowly stiffens vessel walls in the lower limbs, found in nearly every home today. A preserved meat most families serve at breakfast, and how it quietly builds pressure inside the arteries until they can no longer flex. A cooking oil many people believe is safe for the heart, and why it leaves damage the body struggles to repair after 60. A sweet drink most adults over 60 are still pouring daily, and why it coats the inner vessel walls with a film that thickens with each passing year. And the one food most responsible for failing leg circulation in later life, the one I have been saving for the end. Now, number 5, refined white flour and every food made from it. Bread, white rice, store pasta, crackers, biscuits. People dismiss this food because it has been on their table their entire lives. But when the body breaks down refined flour, blood sugar rises very quickly. When this spike happens again and again, meal after meal, a slow adhesion begins forming on the inner walls of the blood vessels. Scientists call it glycation. Think of it as a slow caramel coating building on the inside of a fine pipe. In the wide vessels near the heart, this buildup takes many years to cause visible problems. In the thin, delicate vessels of the feet, where the pipe is already small, that coating narrows the passage much faster. Here is the aging-specific reality. After 65, the body's ability to manage blood sugar after each meal falls considerably compared to younger years. My teacher said that after the 50th winter, the belly must be fed more slowly and more gently. He meant whole grains, grains with their outer skin intact, fermented grain that had already begun to change before it entered the body. There is something else happening in those later decades that makes the flour damage worse. The populations of beneficial gut bacteria that help the body process and clear the byproducts of glycation begin to decline significantly faster than most people realize. We will come back to this. For now, know that the damage from refined flour accumulates faster in an older body than it would have 30 years ago, partly because of what is missing from the belly. The fix is straightforward. Replace white bread with sourdough or whole grain bread. Replace white rice with brown rice or barley. Pair every grain meal with a short walk afterward. My teacher called this the second digestion. Movement after eating helps the body clear the sugar before it can begin its slow coating work. The next food is sitting in nearly every refrigerator. Most people do not realize what it does to the pressure inside their arteries. Number 4. Processed and cured meats. Deli slices, bacon, sausage, smoked ham. The harm is quiet, but it accumulates. High sodium and chemical preservatives called nitrates combine to damage the thin inner lining of every blood vessel in the body. When healthy, this lining is smooth and flexible, like the interior of a fresh garden hose. When sodium and nitrates inflame it repeatedly over years, it becomes rough and stiff, like a hose cracked by too many seasons. Blood must push harder to move through. In the long, thin vessels of the lower legs and feet, that added pressure does slow and lasting harm. After 65, the kidneys slow considerably in clearing excess sodium. What a younger body flushes in a few hours can rest in older tissue for days at a time. If you are managing blood pressure or heart concerns under medical guidance, please speak with your physician about dietary sodium before making significant changes to your meals. Dorothy was 72, a retired schoolteacher from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Her physician had used the phrase early circulation concern about her lower legs. What was overlooked in every appointment was that Dorothy had eaten 2 to 3 servings of deli meat each day for as long as she could remember. Within 10 weeks of removing processed meats and replacing them with roasted chicken and lentils, her leg heaviness had reduced by 38% by her own tracking. But the cold in her toes, that stubborn final piece, had not moved. It was still there every morning. And I want you to remember that detail because Dorothy comes back into this story before we finish, and what finally lifted that piece was something entirely different from what she had changed so far. Replace cured meats with fresh poultry, fish, or plant-based proteins. Pair your meals with ginger tea. Our tradition has long used ginger to support circulation in the smaller vessels of the body. What comes next hides in the health food aisle. Many people feel confident choosing it. Number 3, industrial seed oils, particularly when used for frying. Canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil. These words appear on the labels of most packaged foods and most restaurant menus, and many people feel they are making the responsible choice. When these oils are heated to frying temperature, they go through a process called oxidation. You can recognize it as the sharp smell of oil beginning to smoke in a hot pan. Oxidized fats are chemically unstable, and when the body absorbs them through fried food, they trigger an inflammatory response inside the vessel walls. Our tradition referred to this as rancid fire entering the blood. Think of rust forming on the inner surface of a metal pipe. It does not block the pipe all at once. It builds slowly, beginning in the narrowest places first, which are the vessels of the feet and lower legs. After 60, the body's capacity to clear oxidized compounds from the tissues falls significantly. The gut bacteria responsible for producing the anti-inflammatory compounds that help clear this damage are fewer in number than they were 20 years ago. Our mountain tradition never relied on high-heat oil cooking for those past their 60th year. They simmered, they steamed. They added small amounts of cold-pressed oil after cooking, not during. Cook with olive oil at low to medium heat, or with ghee, which the ancient texts regarded as well-suited for older bodies. Avoid fried foods from restaurants and packaged products. Add a pinch of turmeric to your daily cooking. Turmeric works alongside the body to address the slow inflammation these oils leave behind. If this channel has brought you something of value today, and you have not yet subscribed, I ask a small thing here, midway through our work together. Subscribe now. It takes only a moment, and when you do, This healing knowledge reaches more people who are sitting quietly with these questions and do not yet know where to turn. Number 2. Sweetened drinks and the added sugar inside them. Sodas, packaged fruit juice, flavored coffee drinks, sweetened iced tea. People say it is only one glass. One small comfort each afternoon. Liquid sugar, and especially a compound called high fructose corn syrup, found in most sweetened drinks, passes through the gut and into the blood very quickly, faster than any solid food. Once inside, it attaches to proteins along the vessel walls and forms what researchers call advanced glycation end products. Think of these as a thin film slowly drying on the interior of a clean glass. Each additional sweet drink lays another layer on top. Over months and years, that film thickens. In the lower legs and feet, where blood must travel farthest from the heart, this thickening becomes a meaningful barrier to flow. After 65, vessel walls are less elastic. They cannot expand to compensate for a narrowing interior the way a younger body can. Our tradition drank warm water and herbal preparations. No sweetened drinks passed through our monastery, and our lineage saw very few of the cold, failing legs that so many describe to me today. Replace sweetened drinks with warm water, hibiscus tea, or water with a thin slice of lemon. Drink slowly. My teacher said the breath before drinking is as important as the drink itself. And now we arrive at the one I have been saving, the most important, the one that explains why physicians begin using words like peripheral arterial disease and, in the most advanced cases, amputation. Number 1. Partially hydrogenated oil, also called trans fat. It appears in margarine, commercial shortening, packaged pastries, many crackers, microwave popcorn, and fast food fried items. The ancient texts called it dead oil, meaning oil that has been forced by heat and pressure into a form the body was never made to receive. When partially hydrogenated oils enter the body, they insert themselves into the walls of blood vessels and cause what scientists call endothelial dysfunction, a hardening and inflammation of the vessel's inner membrane. Picture that membrane as a branch of living willow, naturally flexible and responsive to every change in pressure. Trans fat slowly turns it brittle, like a dry twig in winter wind. These fats also raise the form of cholesterol that builds deposits inside the vessel while lowering the form that works to clear those deposits. The passage narrows further still. In the legs and feet, where blood must travel the greatest distance from the heart, this narrowing is the single most common biological reason why physicians begin using the phrase peripheral arterial disease. After 65, the body slows significantly in clearing trans fats from the bloodstream. Researchers following large groups of adults over many years have found meaningfully elevated rates of peripheral artery disease among those who consumed these fats regularly across study after study. Our tradition had observed this pattern for centuries before any laboratory named it. Harold was 75, a retired carpenter from Savannah, Georgia. His doctor told him the circulation in his left leg had deteriorated significantly, and that further decline could require serious medical intervention. What was overlooked in every single appointment was that Harold had used margarine his entire adult life. He spread it on every piece of toast each morning. He cooked with it in the pan beside the bread. 40 years of that choice because he had been told for decades it was the safe one. Harold cleared all partially hydrogenated oils from his kitchen. He read every label. He replaced margarine with small amounts of real butter and extra virgin olive oil. Within 12 weeks, his leg heaviness had reduced by 42% by his own careful tracking, and his ankle swelling was measurably down. He wrote to me, "Dao Shen, I was given wrong information my whole life. I am angry. But I am grateful I found this while I still had time." But Harold still had cold in his toes. The same stubborn final piece Dorothy had. Reduced, yes, but present. And when he wrote to me again asking what remained, I told him what I'm about to tell you now. Now I need to say something I resisted saying for a long time. These 5 foods do tremendous damage to the vessels in your legs. Removing them does tremendous good. But there is a reason why so many people do everything right with their diet and still carry that persistent cold, that stubborn heaviness that will not fully lift. I watched this pattern in person after person before I finally understood what was causing it. And understanding it changed the direction of my work. After 60, the body loses a significant portion of its beneficial gut bacterial populations and continues to lose them with each passing decade. The ancient teaching that all illness begins in the belly is not a metaphor. It is a description of something researchers can now measure. These bacteria are responsible for producing the compounds that regulate inflammation throughout the entire body, including the vessel walls of the legs and feet. When the population is strong, those vessels receive what they need to remain flexible, to clear oxidized fats, to manage the byproducts of sugar spikes. When the population is compromised, even clean eating leaves a gap the diet alone cannot fully close. The garden has been depleted. You can remove the weeds, but without restoring the soil, the new growth never fully takes hold. For years, I watched people in our tradition maintain their populations through fermented foods, specific roots and practices our lineage had preserved across generations. But I began to notice that for people over 60 living in the modern world, with decades of processed food already inside their tissues, the traditional approach was no longer enough on its own to fully restore what had been lost. I spent 2 years looking for something that could address this gap, something that brought together all three of what the belly requires together: the living bacteria themselves, the prebiotic fiber to feed them so they can survive inside the body, and what researchers now call postbiotics, the actual healing compounds the bacteria produce once they are properly nourished. Think of it as a garden. A seed needs soil. The soil needs water. All three must work together, or nothing grows. Probiotics alone, which most people try, are the seed without the soil. They arrive in an environment that cannot sustain them. What I found, after 2 years of searching, was a kombucha gummy called BoochBod. It carries two clinically studied strains, lactospore and postbiotics LM1004, alongside prebiotic fiber and dandelion root, which our mountain tradition has gathered in support of the digestive center for as long as I can remember. It is a gummy, not a capsule, which matters for many of us who prefer not to swallow pills. And it is backed by a 60-day guarantee. If you do not feel a meaningful difference, you pay nothing. When Dorothy added it to the food changes she had already made, the cold in her toes began to lift within the first 3 weeks. When Harold added it, the final stubborn heaviness he could not move with diet alone began to shift within the first month. These were not miracles. They were the gap being closed. The soil was finally being restored alongside the seeds. Over 30,000 people are now using it. The link is in the description below. And as always, please speak with your physician before starting any supplement. Now let me give you 3 practices I have seen make the most consistent difference for older legs and feet. The first is timing. Eat your heaviest meal before midday, not at dinner. The body processes fat and sugar more efficiently in the morning hours. An older body that eats heavily in the evening is asking the vessels to work hardest at the very hour they most need to rest. The second is warm water before each meal. Pour a cup of warm water, hold it in both hands for a moment, and drink it slowly before you eat. This steadies the belly, slows the blood sugar rise that follows, and prepares the digestive center to receive food more gently. My teacher began every meal this way without exception, even on the coldest winter mornings in the monastery. The third is steady practice over single effort. 4 clean meals each week, free of the 5 foods we covered today, will do more for your vessels over time than 1 perfect week followed by a return to old habits. Healing in older bodies moves like a slow river, not a flood. Before you begin, there are 3 mistakes I have watched people make that undo everything they are starting. The first is trusting the front of the package. Many products say no trans fat on the front, but still list partially hydrogenated oil in the full ingredient list. This is permitted when the amount per serving falls below a small threshold. But people eat more than 1 serving, and the amounts add up. Always read the full ingredient list, every time. The second is replacing soda with packaged fruit juice. Bottled juice carries nearly as much sugar as most sodas, without the fiber that makes whole fruit safe for older vessels. The damage to vessel walls continues all the same. Move to water or herbal tea instead. The third is removing one food while leaving the others unchanged. These 5 foods work together inside the body, and their combined effect is greater than any single one alone. The greatest benefit comes from reducing several of them at the same time. We have walked far together today, dear one. Let me say what matters most before we close. It is not about food. It is about the morning you bend down in the garden and pull the first ripe tomato from the vine, hands warm in the soil. It is about standing beside your grandchild at the kitchen counter, teaching them to make the recipe your own grandmother made for you with her patient hands. Those are the mornings ahead of you. The road is still open. Here is the summary of everything we covered. Refined white flour, which causes repeated blood sugar spikes that gradually stiffen vessel walls. Processed and cured meats, which carry sodium and nitrates that inflame and harden the inner vessel lining. Industrial seed oils used for frying, which produce oxidized fats that trigger slow inflammation inside the vessel walls. Sweetened drinks and added sugar, which coat the vessel interior with a thickening film over time. And the most important, partially hydrogenated oils and trans fats, which stiffen the vessel membrane and significantly raise the risk of peripheral arterial disease. And beneath all 5 of them, the gut bacterial decline that prevents the diet changes from closing the final gap. If the cold and heaviness have not moved the way you hoped from diet alone, that is why. The BoochBod link is in the description below with the 60-day guarantee. If you feel no difference, you owe nothing. Begin there. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 surprised you most. I read every single one, and what you share guides which healing topics I bring here next. To you, my dear one, I say only this: begin. The first step is always the smallest. Walk it today.